In this video, we continue our series of looking at vintage-inspired watches. Alright guys, so this is part 2 of our series. If you've not seen part 1, I will link to it down below in the description to check it out after watching this video. But that video was looking at watches under $500. We're going to then jump up to around $500, around $2,000 for a range here that we're going to be looking at. If you want me to continue this series after watching this video, leave some comments down below. But let's start off with our first watch on the list. So the first brand that we're going to be looking at here is Hamilton. And in the prior episode of this series, we looked at the brand as well. And there's a lot of different watches underneath the Hamilton umbrella that you can certainly look at and would fall under the classification of vintage inspired. One being the Hamilton Intramatic, for an example. But I feel like I look at that watch quite frequently on the channel, so I want to look at a different piece that is a little bit different compared to what I think many consider from the brand. And that is the Hamilton Pan-Europe Day-Date Auto. So these are modern watches that pay tribute to vintage Pan-Europe models of the 1970s, with these models having a day-date display and a day-of-the-week indicator rather than a chronograph. These watches come with a price of $700 to $1,075, case size of 42 millimeters, thickness of 12 millimeters, powered by an automatic caliber H30 movement that has an ETA-based movement with an 80-hour power reserve, water resistance of 50 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. So now for our next brand here, we have Mito, and we're gonna be looking at the Mito Commander. So the Mito Commander pays tribute to a lot of the Ocean Star line from back in 1959 when that line was introduced, with it utilizing a single shell case, eliminating any water resistance problems from the back of the watch case. And this design is still being used in Commanders to this day. The price here is $500 to $950. Case size is 40 millimeters, thickness is 10 millimeters, powered by an automatic Mito 80 movement, has an ETA-based movement, 80-hour power reserve again, water resistance of 50 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. So these are just really fun watches. I like the old kind of retro styling in terms of the font used on the dials, and you can find them for pretty affordable prices as well. Now for our next watch, we have another Swatch brand. I hit 3 in a row here, but that is Tissot. And Tissot has a lot of good heritage pieces, but the one we're gonna be looking at here is one that I recently mentioned in my video where I looked at alternatives to luxury watches. If you've not seen that video, I've done 2 parts of that series. I can link to them in the description down below as well. But this watch here is the Tissot Petite Sub-Seconds. So when looking at this watch, it does remind me of a watch that I have in my collection, a vintage Omega 30T2 dating back to the 1940s. And with this design, it certainly is drawing a lot of influence from that era. The price here is $650 to $995, the lower end being quartz and the higher end going towards the mechanical side of things. Case size is 42 millimeters, thickness 11.4 millimeters, movement is a manual ETA 6498-1, water resistance of 50 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. So a couple interesting things about this watch, one being just its manly wound movement. I'm certainly probably paying tribute to this era of watches, and just the movement size in general. Coming in with a 36 diameter for that actual movement itself, and considering this is a 42 millimeter case, not a lot of real estate here to work with. I would love to see like a 36 millimeter, 38 millimeter. I mean, my Omega is, 33.5 millimeters here. So certainly a lot of watches with those kind of traditional subdials from this era that I think this Tissot is pulling from are certainly smaller, and I'd love to see that alternative as well. But a really cool looking watch from the brand. And just another option to throw out there, kind of a favorite of mine, was really doing a lot of research on this and was considering buying one a few years back, is the Tissot Heritage 1948, a really cool vintage inspired chronograph. So when I'm considering brands that have really put a focus on heritage, vintage inspired pieces, Longines is certainly at the top of the list. And in this video, we're gonna be looking at a couple of their models. One starting off here, one will be later in the video, spoiler alert. But first is the Longines Conquest Heritage. So the original model was released back in 1954, and to this day, still is one of my favorite Longines watches. We're gonna be looking at the 35 millimeter variant. They also have different size variants available, but this particular model coming in with a price of $1,000 to around $1,200. Case size, 35 millimeters, like I mentioned. Movement is an ETA 2824-2. Water resistance of 30 meters, and has a Hazelite crystal. And I certainly don't mind the use of a Hazelite crystal when you're going for that vintage heritage type look. I think it works really well with the watch I just am working on a video for, the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch, with that Hazelite crystal version and staying original to its true design. I certainly like it. I actually do think the look warrants a more natural vintage inspired look and I really just enjoy these Longines Heritage models. This one at the top of the list, but we'll be coming back to them shortly in the video. So if you guys have been watching some of my videos for some time, you probably know that I like Junghans, or if you follow me on Instagram as well, as I post pictures of my Junghans Max Build chronoscope from time to time. However, when you're considering the brand itself, there's a lot of just different models that you're considering that probably don't fall under the classification as vintage inspired. However, we're going to be looking at one that I think is very overlooked, very interesting style and design, and certainly does have that vintage type aesthetic. And the watch here is the Junghans Meister Diver. So we're going to be looking at the reference 027360800. So this watch comes in with a price around $1,000 to around $1,300, case size of 37.7 millimeters, thickness of 7.3 millimeters, powered by a manual J8151. It's an ETA-based movement, water resistance of 30 meters, and has a plexiglass crystal. So this is a watch from the brand that I think is very overlooked, because I think of many people, they just consider just a couple watches from the brand, just the kind of the notable connection to Max Bill and the Bauhaus School of Design. But the whole Meister line from Junghans is incredibly overlooked in my opinion. I know that some of the specs, and I've always said it, Junghans more appeals to the design and the visual aesthetic rather than the actual specs of the watches themselves. So you have to really be a lover of that just style that they really embody. But this is certainly an interesting watch, and it does fit the mold that we're kind of looking for here today. So I'm a big fan of Auris watches. I recently did a review on the Auris Diver 65, great vintage inspired diver-oriented watches. Certainly not perfect, but a great watch. If you want to check out that review, I can link to it down below. But what I want to look at here is probably my favorite watch from Auris overall, which is the Auris Big Crown Poynter date. So these watches come in price range of $1,200 to $2,000. I find most of them circulating on that lower end of the spectrum here. You can find them for even less than that on the secondary market. Case size is 36 millimeters and a 40 millimeter option, so you have both variants that you can go for. Automatic Sellita-based movement in these watches, water resistance of 50 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. So this line is a staple in Auris's collection of watches, and they just released an 80th anniversary limited edition, which is, I think, really stylish. It's a 40 millimeter watch, really awesome looking style, but I think my favorite out of all of the Big Crown Poynter dates are the 36 millimeter variants with the bronze case. So the bronze case options look fantastic, and I would certainly recommend to take a look whenever I feel like I mention them. And I want to get my hands on one very soon to do a really in-depth review. These things look fantastic in person as well. So hopefully to be able to do that, but probably my personal favorite when I'm thinking about Auris watches in general. Okay, so now let's give some diver watch love here by looking at Arado. So we're gonna be looking at the Arado Hyperchrome Captain Cook. And the particular reference here is the R325-00305. So this reference comes with that faux patina. You also have an alternative that doesn't really have the same vintage style that you can get for a little bit more money, but I personally like this version a lot more in just its vintage inspired look. $1,500 to $1,900 when it comes to the price range. 37.3 millimeters, movement is an ETA C07611, water resistance of 100 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. And this era which this watch represents for the brand is probably the glory years of the brand. The 1960s with the release of their Diastar, and of course this model. All right guys, so now for our next watch, we have a Zen Watch. And it's a watch that has some connection, it definitely has a resemblance to a very historically relevant watch from the brand. And the watch is the Zen 240. Back in 1985, German astronaut Reinhard Furrer wore a Zen 140-142 aboard the Spacelab D1 mission. And at the time, it was recognized as the first automatic chronograph ever taken into space. That was later found out to not be the first automatic chrono in space, but still a very historically significant watch from the brand. But this watch here comes in with a price of $1,700 to around $1,900, case size of 43 millimeters, thickness is 11 millimeters, movement is a Sellita 2201, water resistance of 100 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. And now next up on our list, we have what I promised, another Longines watch with the Legend Diver. And this watch I feel is a fan favorite of many, paying tribute to a lot of vintage divers from the brand. This watch comes in with a $1,600 price, around $2,400. Case size is 42 millimeters. That particular variant in the case size does wear rather large. They also have a 36 millimeter version as well, and considering just the longer lugs of this watch, I think it might be a good consideration for those that are kind of the middle of the road when it comes to wrist size. Thickness is 13.5 millimeters. Movement is an automatic ETA 28-24-2. Water resistance of 300 meters, and has a sapphire crystal. And as another alternative to this watch, check out the Longines Skin Diver, another really interesting vintage inspired diver watch from the brand as well. So guys, if you like this video, be sure to again, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And if you do want me to continue this series, just give me some encouragement down below. I always like to just kind of see what you guys like and what you guys don't like, and creating that content around what you guys demand. Also, if you want to get an iconic piece for yourself, hit the link in the description. Go to Bob's Watches, a partner of the channel, one of the largest online retailers, and any purchase using that link in the description also supports the content that you're watching. Also head over to our website and check out our watch straps that we have available. And then finally, if you want to join our watch giveaway, fill out the watch giveaway form and then follow me on Instagram. Guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.